For as long as the institution of criminal punishment has been around, people have been trying to find a way to avoid it. And while I think that we could all agree that it would be easier to just not commit crimes, some people just want to have their cake and eat it too. These are the top 10 evil people too scary for prison. And hey, if you think you know about someone who might belong on this list, please let us know in the comments. Number 10. The Long Island Killer. Active from 1996 to 2010, the Long Island Killer managed to avoid prison by simply avoiding being caught at all. When 24-year-old Shannon Gilbert called 911 in the summer of 2010, her only words were a simple, "They are trying to kill me." After that, Shannon was never seen again, prompting the Suffolk County Police Department to begin their search. On December of that same year, the police made a startling discovery. Along Ocean Parkway was a skeleton, packed away in a burlap bag and buried by snow. But that wasn't the only one they found. Over the course of the summer, more and more bodies were discovered by police, each one relating to a previous missing persons case, the oldest going back to 1996. The worst thing? While all of these bodies were found, their killer never was, and remains at large to this day. Their victims being Maureen Brainard, Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, Jessica Taylor, an unidentified Asian person, Valerie Mack, 2 more unidentified women, and Shannon Gilbert. Number 9. Laszlo Csatary. Born in Austria-Hungary in 1915, Laszlo Csatary was hired as a member of the Royal Hungarian Police in 1944. From there, he organized the deportation of over 15,000 Jewish people to Auschwitz. But when the war ended, he was tried for his crimes and sentenced to death. However, in 1949, Csatary made his escape to Canada, becoming a citizen 6 years later. He remained in the country for the next 40 years, but when it was discovered that he'd falsified his citizenship documents, Csatary was deported back to Hungary. He lived there for another 10 years, until reporters from the British publication The Sun revealed his address in July 2012. From there, a whirlwind of charges were pressed against him, the Justice Minister of Slovakia having readied a case. It was all for naught, however, as on August of 2013, Laszlo Csatary passed away from pneumonia, the 98-year-old war criminal having lived for nearly a century without knowing justice, and the families of his victims never knowing peace. Number 8. The Doodler. In 1974, the San Francisco area was struck with a series of murders that would continue for the next year and a half, specifically targeting the patrons of gay bars. The Doodler received his nickname for making sketches of his victims prior to taking their life. All of the victims shared similar wounds, but not all of them did actually pass on. Several victims survived the attempts on their lives, but most of them refused to testify for fear of outing themselves due to the widespread homophobia of the time. As a result, Gerald Kavanaugh, Joseph Stevens, Klaus Christman, Warren Andrews, Frederick Kappen, and Harold Goldberg may never know peace. The case remains open to this day, with police having recently begun to use modern technology in an attempt to locate the Doodler. 7. Daji. Also known as Su Daji, this woman was the favored concubine of King Zhou of the Shang dynasty. Born in 1076 BC, Daji was born to the household of Yosu, which was captured by the Zhou and Daji taken as a trophy. With his love for her, Zhou went out of his way to do whatever he could to please his new mistress. As her time in the palace went on, Daji's requests became more depraved and violent. She began experimenting on the population, inventing new and increasingly brutal ways of executing her victims to sate her curiosity. Daji was executed by her lover's successor, King Wu of Zhou, later being used as the reason why King Wu took over the kingdom in the first place. Number 6. The Babysitter. From the time span of February 1976 to March of 1977, 4 Mark Stebbins, Jill Robinson, Christine Milhalik, and Timothy King went missing in Oakland County. Each time a child went missing, their bodies were found in open spaces, in front of office buildings, alongside roads, and dropped within ditches. Coroners determined that were tortured before their passing, each one showing signs of having been held by the killer. While DNA profiles were taken from the bodies, matches had never been found. Numerous people were suspected, and while several other deaths were suspected to be the work of the babysitter, none were ever completely connected. The case has been reopened multiple times, and while several other criminals have been caught as a result, the babysitter remains at large. Number 5. Joseph Kony. Founder and current leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony is a terrorist that has been active in and around Uganda since 1987, a brutal Christian fundamentalist whose trademark has been his employment of child soldiers. Kony's victims range in the hundreds of thousands, though the exact number has never been confirmed, and his methods of indicting new soldiers is even more disturbing. A number of movements have been started with the end goal of capturing Joseph Kony, including Kony 2012, a massive online activist movement led by filmmaker Jason Russell. The United Nations and Ugandan government have also tried numerous operations to take down Kony. None have proven successful. However, according to recent reports, his forces have dwindled down from thousands to mere hundreds. And while he hasn't been captured yet, experts presume that it could happen any day. Number 4. Suharto. On the 1st of October, an organization of Indonesian revolutionaries assassinated 8 generals in an attempted coup d'etat. The Indonesian government's response to this was to immediately blame the Communist Party of Indonesia, better known as PKI. The leader of this movement was Suharto, who proceeded to kill anyone with even a passing association with PKI. These killings were supported by a number of Western powers, including the US. Starting in Jakarta, this purge swept across the country, with between 500,000 and 1 million victims in its wake. Suharto then seized the government for himself, assuming the title of second president of Indonesia. He completely upended the previous government, filling the staff only with those who supported him. He would rule for another 30 years before stepping down, never tried for his crimes, and passing away from multiple organ failure. Number 3. Pol Pot. Beginning life as Saleth Sar, Pol Pot was a Cambodian communist revolutionary and the founder of the Khmer Rouge movement. Following the Cambodian Civil War, he took power as Prime Minister of Democratic Kampuchea, ruling for 2 years. His primary goal was to turn Cambodia into an agrarian socialist society, which he enforced through social control and cultural and lingual fascism. His most egregious act was the perpetration of the Cambodian genocide, a mass killing that resulted in the deaths of somewhere between 1.5 to 2 million civilians. He accomplished this through forced labor camps, where those seen as people against the state were sentenced to brutal work. They were also known as the killing fields, and when the Vietnamese army invaded, their soldiers found mass graves. In 1998, Pol Pot was captured, sentenced to life imprisonment, and placed under house arrest. While he officially died of heart failure, an American journalist present claimed that he had taken his own life when threatened with being tried by the US. Number 2. Jack the Ripper. This list wouldn't be complete without the famed Ripper. Active from 1888 to 1891, Jack the Ripper was responsible for the passing of a number of women in the Whitechapel area of London. The actual body count is strongly debated, as the original 7 victims were part of the Whitechapel killings, but whether or not the Ripper was responsible for those is unknown. 5 victims have been confirmed to have been his work: Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Edders, and Mary Jane Kelly. There were several other victims after these: Rose Milett, Alice Mackenzie, the Pinchin Street Torso, and Frances Coles, though their relation to the Ripper is also unconfirmed. Other killings could have been attributed to the case, but due to its high-profile nature, the police had to suspect that copycats may have come into play. In the end, Jack was never found, and his victims' families never saw justice. Despite this, Jack the Ripper has been immortalized immortalized in countless fictional settings and media, which may have been what he wanted in the first place. It may seem easy to place this man at the top of the list, but in a day and age where his ideas are beginning to spread through the Western political landscape again, it must be stated with absolute certainty that this man was utterly vile. His rise to power has been thoroughly documented. The leader of a homegrown fascist movement that utilized perceived losses of a cultural war as fuel for their takeover. Once in power, he led numerous movements poised at dividing and separating the populace through a regime of hate and misinformation. Appealing to his followers, this man thrived through fanaticism. This man forced his way into office through bullying, threats, and intimidation of both himself and his party members. This man has never gone to prison. Who is he? You already know. Thanks for watching, and please remember to like and subscribe.